when until I can, you know.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call the April 11, 2018 Building Appeals Board for the City of Ojai into order. We'll start with the roll call.
Okay. Board Member Daddy,
Present.
Board Member Murphy. Here. Board Member Farmer,
Here.
Chair Ulick,
Here.
and myself, yes, I'm here.
Okay, then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think I would ask that Board Member Daddy lead us.
Please follow me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Okay, next is public communications. Public communications is the time set aside during the Building Appeals Board meeting for members of the public to address the Building Appeals Board on items of city business other than the scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the board and will generally be referred to staff and/or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action on non-agendized items can be taken at this meeting. I don't have any cards. Are there any members of the public who would like to engage in public communication? Do you want to? Yes, we're going to have a short presentation related to a fire-resistant construction element. Would you please identify yourself and give your name and address, and then you may proceed.
Thank you. Is my mic on? It is. My name is Russ Gallo. I'm a general contractor based out of Santa Clarita. My company name is Anco Design Build. We've been around since 1981. The reason why I'm here is a visit that I made to Bob Daddy's office, and I was representing Vulcan Vents, which is a fire-resistant attic, soffit, crawl space vent, which has a twofold defense system. It defends against embers that fly through the air when you have a firestorm, which, as you all know, has been happening this last year at an alarming rate. Last year we lost, I believe, close to 10,000 structures in California, which happens to be the highest, and it was a time that everything kind of came together with the drought, all the situations that have been happening with urban building close to mountainsides, and it was pretty similar to what happened in 2003. So while I always want business, I never want that type of business. So here's why I'm here. Our company mission now is to educate people on different ways that they can make their house safer with layers of protection. One of the biggest weaknesses in a home happens to be the vents. And I've got samples of vents that are sold at Home Depot. I've got samples of vents that are installed in homes in your community and throughout Southern California and all of California. What has happened in the last few years is something that's been happening regularly. While homes have to have a breathable air exchange, you'll recognize the vents as little bird holes underneath the eaves. You'll recognize them as screens, soffit screens. They're on every home. And every home that is designed and engineered and built must have a proper air exchange. The unfortunate part to this is that the weakness in the venting system is the size of the screen. Oftentimes you will see homes on fire breaking news. You'll see the helicopter above. You'll see the firemen up on the roof. And it looks like they're trying to put the fire out. Unfortunately, usually those homes are going to be a total loss. What they're trying to do is keep that house from burning to a point where it catches other homes on fire. Homes along hillside areas do not do so well. And a new unusual thing started happening last year, that homes are igniting 2, 3, and 4 miles away, which is quite unusual. They're not igniting from the flames. They're igniting from the actual embers that are flying through the air that unfortunately get sucked in through these vent screens. They create their own ecosystem, they create their own wind patterns, and they create their own heat, making it very difficult to fight. So how do you stop it? Some of it's luck. You talk to any fireman, man of the hose, and they'll tell you, hey, when this happens, we try to get there, but we can't be everywhere. When a lot of people are evacuated from their homes, the first thing they do as they're driving away, and they've all said this during interviews, they look back and they wonder if their house will still be there. And unfortunately, it's kind of a hit and miss. It's an act of God to a certain point, but it can be somewhat controlled and mitigated if you take certain defense measures. So that's what I do. I do have some samples here tonight that I can show you very quickly. I know your time constraints. I'm available for questions, and that's why I'm here.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you're saying, you started out by talking, oh, sorry. Yeah. You started out by mentioning the crawl space. What do you do with the crawl space? I didn't get that.
Let me show you real quick.
Okay. There's Luke.
Crawl spaces will usually, and this is a smaller version, they will usually have something that looks like this.
Yeah.
And I'll pass this around, and if you look at the back of this, I'll talk louder since I'm away from the mic, you'll see the screen on the back. You can just go ahead and
Oh, a
pass it.
small mesh.
That one is safe to pass around because that one won't cut you as much.
As much.
That's why I'm letting you handle it, okay? If you go to Home Depot, this is a sample of a screen that cost about $4. This is pretty typical in the building industry. A lot of contractors, when they replace these, it's usually because a rodent has gotten through it, or it's been kicked in, or who knows what happened. So they go ahead and buy these and replace them. This is a Vulcan screen. Looks similar, can be sized to any dimension. I've got some tape on this, so be careful when you touch it, because the one thing I have found about all these materials, they can be a little deadly to the fingers. So this is a Vulcan screen, and here's what you're going to see on this one. This will have the large mesh screen.
Oh, yeah, I see what it means, yeah. Be hard for a number to get through that.
Your Vulcan screen will have the large 1/4-inch meshing. It will also have in the center a honeycomb material that's a lightweight aluminum that is coated with intermittent. I'll explain what intermittent is. Some of you may know, but for who don't, intermittent is a product that was developed originally by Dow Chemical. That product actually is a fire inhibiting product. So here's how this is made. You have this frame that houses the honeycomb. On one side you have this mesh, on the other side you have a very fine mesh. So here's where you're getting the protection. The ember protection, and this is how embers fly, and this has been studied by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and also by many fire-related agencies, because they know. This product was invented by firemen, by the way, actual firefighters that fought on the front lines, because they were seeing too many homes that were burning from the inside out, which is kind of odd at first when you hear a home burns from the inside out. But once you understand what happens with the physics of the fire, the embers, and what is happening with air, heat, embers, and combustible materials, which are in crawl spaces, crawl spaces underneath the house, attics above. So you have the living area that is surrounded by areas that potentially can catch on fire. And the weakness is the screen. I understand that you're having discussions on this type of screen, and I would say that that is a great start, but there's more to it than just the screen. When you start altering screens, you have to be aware of the airflow. So you've got to have somebody that can somewhat engineer this properly to make sure that you add enough screens for the reduced airflow. You don't have to change any codes on airflow. They already exist. Engineers that design homes already have those formulas figured into the master plan on how to make sure a home is properly vented. What they have missed over the years, and this happens with everything in life, is the changes in our living environment. What has happened is we have more population. We have more people that are expanding in towards the hillside areas. So you have more home construction, and as time goes on, building and safety in all different areas, they keep, upping the game and making sure that we are building to the proper building standards. This area is one area that's really been missed, but it can't be missed any longer. Just so you know, you're not the only area that is changing these codes and upgrading the codes. This is happening throughout California, and it's going to happen pretty much everywhere because a lot of the insurance companies that have lost all these homes, they've got a crisis on hand with the money that needs to be paid out, which it will be paid out, which everybody will contribute in their homeowner policy. Insurance companies cannot go out of business. It's bad business. They have to maintain their business. So in order to stay in business, rates have to go up. No way around it. But in order to reduce payouts from going out, they're going to start toughening the requirements. You can ask Bob about this, but many homes that are now underwritten through somebody that goes out to check can this home be insured will now be requiring to have the exposed eaves covered. What that means is they're going to box in the eave area, but I pointed this out to Bob when I visited him that I have observed enclosed eave homes with these type of screens. So all you did was you isolated the area where the embers are going to go in, but you didn't do anything to keep them out. That's what I do. So I install these, and every time I get one of these in, I feel very good for the homeowner because, at least they're doing something that is positive, that has a very good chance of saving that home when there's a wildfire blowing through. These wildfires are pretty quick, by the way, and I had the pleasure of driving up through Santa Paula. I see how fast it's recovering, but you can see that it's greening up, it's brown and black. And it's sad. There's a lot of stories. I have rebuilt homes for homeowners that have gotten a check from the insurance company, but it didn't replace the mosaics that the kids made and all the family artwork in the home, and it's pretty destructive for families when they lose a home. So every time I can put these in, I'm doing my part to at least, give them a fighting chance. That's what we're all about.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
How does besides the honeycomb and two layers of screening,
Yes.
exactly how does your product perform in the presence of embers? What happens? What does that screen do besides having a smaller mesh prevent certain size embers from entering into the structure. What else?
Well, here's what it actually does. When embers fly through the air, it literally is a firestorm. I have actually been in one last year in the Sunland to Hunger area, and I was the closest one to get to a family member's house, and they were being evacuated, and this was the creek fire off by the 210 Sunland to Hunland area. I actually got out of my truck and had embers landing on me, and it actually burns you. I mean, it pits the paint on the car. I mean, it's pretty bad. Here's what embers do. And this has been tested. It's been tested by the state fire marshal. It's been tested by the insurance industry. When embers are flying through, what happens is they will collide with the screen. When you have a large screen opening, they are able to enter a lot easier. When you introduce this honeycomb design, there's a reason why it's honeycomb besides being coated. When you introduce this, and I'll pass this around, embers have a much tougher time of going through the honeycomb, because now they have a path of collision, and embers don't do well with a collision path. Now, I have been inside attics that are black. I'm wondering how the house didn't ignite. On the other side of the honeycomb is the tight screen. So what we're looking to do with this type of screen is we're reducing the flow of embers from coming in by making it very difficult for embers to penetrate through. Now, is it 100%? Cannot tell you that. But it will reduce it considerably. We don't have a magic number on that. The reason? This is not an exact science, but it's being studied and it's being improved every year. This was developed about 10 years ago. That's when the patents were put on this. There were some homes that were recently saved this year up north. We can't show you those pictures, and I'm going to tell you why.
You know, you're actually not on the microphone for the viewers at home. And if I could just quickly, sorry to interrupt,
That's
but
okay.
the item is not agendized. You're free to take a presentation, but yeah,
Okay.
we do have to be careful
Well,
to avoid a
then
Brown Act
I
violation.
understand, so ask me any questions you have left, and I think I've pretty much explained what the product does.
Which faces outside, the small screen or the bigger screen?
You can do either one. We prefer to always have the small screen on the outside. The small screen is actually the best. Most of these screens usually get custom size for each house. Every house is different. You need to have professional eyes on this because you've got to also figure out, okay, I'm replacing 10 screens, but how many more do I need to add to offset my restricted area? And if that's done intelligently, which is just a mechanical configuration of math and how much air I've got to get into the house, you can intelligently address this. So you don't have to reinvent any new codes here. The codes already exist for how much air exchange a house needs. Usually the tight mesh screen is usually on the outside. We want to keep the embers from going in. In the event that we have a really drastic situation and you've got flame now outside the house, once the flames hit your honeycomb, it literally activates the intermittent coating at about 379 to 80 degrees. This actually shrinks and shuts off completely. Flame cannot go through it. And it's been tested and tested and tested, and it's passed every single test. So here's what would happen. You would still have an insurance claim there because you have a house that's been scarred with flame, but you don't have a total loss. These just get replaced with the insurance claim.
Just in broad terms, as far as multipliers, how much more is this product than what you would typically have provided by a sheet metal company or
Okay.
or you'd be able to purchase?
$4, $35. Do the math.
Okay.
Now, can some people install this? Yes. We don't recommend it because some people may not have the qualifications to do it. It should be professionally installed because somebody's got to address the airflow, and you've also got to caulk it because any areas that you leave uncaulked, like in eaves that have large gaps and openings. And I brought another sample here real quick. If you're able. This is your worst offender for fire. This one here is the number one reason why homes burn down. These are installed in homes that have enclosed eaves, but if they have this large grill, the embers go right through. This is what it looks like in the back.
The caulking you're talking about, referring to as fire caulking?
It's intermittent.
Yeah. Okay.
It comes in various forms. We usually get it in caulks and cases, and we usually have to use a half to a full case per home. That's how many openings we find. See, the one opening you forget is the one opening that can let an ember in.
I wanted to ask you, you know, when you see those little round vents, what do you do for that?
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm taking more time, but I'm curious.
this is what we're talking about. They're called bird holes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a nickname for it. They actually make an insert. But keep in mind that when you add these, then you have to add more of these. Sometimes it's better just to cut out a larger rectangular opening than custom order the vent that fits right in.
I see.
This can get pretty expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure, because you have a
So-
lot of them.
Okay.
There's a way to do this. It's actually easy to do. Homeowners who do get it installed pretty much are very relieved that at least their home has a chance.
Right.
Without it, and there's a major fire, it's kind of like a hope and a prayer. That's just how fires are.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, building officials report.
We don't have any further reports right now.
Okay. Then we are looking at consent items, the minutes of the Building Appeals Board meeting of December 19, 2017. Any comments?
Not for me.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just, I'm looking at item number on this page 2 of 6, and it's under Chair Ulrich. It says, requested FEMA flood map be available to the Building Appeals Board. Was that made available?
I do believe it was.
Yes, it was. We had a whole battery of them. We had about 5 or 6 that showed the sphere of influence. It showed the different areas. It had 3 or 4 overlays of the flood. The broad areas, because the flood area is so big. So we showed a big overlay, and then what we did was we had some smaller sections with a lot more detail that were magnified much greater, so people could actually identify their lots.
Okay, thank you.
I would hope that eventually we put up a big fire map in the lobby and a big flood map in the lobby, so when people walk in, they know where they actually are. Because we've had people say, I didn't know I was in the severe area, which is up on Mercer, so
Well,
just
that-
a thought.
That's an ancillary question then to that is, where is the FEMA flood map? Is one posted in the, anywhere in the city?
It is available on the table on the left as you walk into the lobby across from the planner's desk. We're limited to wall space currently to hang a map in the lobby. But we do have table size. I do believe they're 11 by 17 size pages available for the public to view.
Okay, I don't think that and looking at 11 by 17, I couldn't tell anything about it.
Those are the
Scale.
those are the detailed maps on the close up.
That gives streets are identifiable on it?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay. Anyone else? While others look, in that case, then I have several issues. page 5 of 6, first full paragraph at the top. And this is something that I had complained of with the former building official, which is on minutes several times, numerous times. We had to have them done because there were either factual inaccuracies or what I characterized as editorializing of the comments of the members of the Building Appeals Board. And in this case, it had to do with the interpretation of the comments made without being attributed to, well, let's see here. It's under CAL FIRE representatives rather than a specific speaker. And once again, this is the first full paragraph at the top of page 5 of 6. And actually, well, I'll just start with that one and work backwards. Confirm that the city has the ability to be more restrictive in its fire map. If the lead agency makes a determination for the fire map to be more restrictive, a change to safety element could be initiated. Could be initiated to update the city's current map and add the moderate and high fire hazard severity zone through the safety element. This is typically done as an agenda item to the Planning Commission and to the City Council for adoption. I don't recall the last sentence as far as typically done as an agenda item to the Planning Commission being, and to the City Council for adoption being anything that was discussed by the board or related by a speaker. So that is an insert, and that's what I'm referring to as far as editorializing. And this is ostensibly from the speakers was CAL FIRE. Confirm that the city has the ability to be more restrictive in its fire map. I believe our question was, can the city develop its own fire map? Because what we have now was adopted by default, not by any action of the City Council. The fire map that was developed in 2017 and adopted by default by action of law in 2010, which universally, CAL FIRE, Ventura County Fire Protection District, universally agree is inaccurate. It was not a representation of the actual conditions on the ground, and certainly in the wildland area surrounding the city. It does not accurately address the city's sphere of interest, and is functionally, because of a lack of any gradations, it's all either red or it's moderate, which also is not accurate to conditions on the ground or combustible fuel stockpiles within the city limits, within the sphere of interest, et cetera. So what I'm coming to is these minutes that purport to be minutes are riven with comments and statements that are not accurate to the speakers or to this board. And I can't, since it's my obligation to sign this thing, I cannot sign it in good faith, or as from my perspective, it being an accurate representation of what we're doing here on December 19th.
Can I just add
Sure.
one quick comment
Sure.
for you? When preparing the minutes, especially during this meeting specifically, there were several fire representatives going up to the microphone, and because of the inability to pan cameras and change cameras, it was hard to determine which one was speaking at the time because one person was talking. That's why it was characterized as a fire representatives. I'm just trying to explain why it wasn't, for each person. If you would like, you can send me your comments. We'll get them addressed, and then we'll bring them to the next bad meeting.
Yeah, and I'm kind of used to it at this point, having to do that, because this isn't the first time. What I'm coming to is I prefer going forward, that we don't engage in that. The minutes should reflect what is commented, the actual comments, not the interpretations and the layering in of specific knowledge or specific, in this case, what looked to me to be policy positions. If the lead agency makes a determination for the fire map to be more restrictive, define which lead agency that was. My understanding is the lead agency is the city. Most other references in this document are lead agencies are either CAL FIRE or Ventura County Fire Department. In this instance, you've got three potential entities that could be the lead agency. And when it comes to the fire map, we've been asking this question for several months. It's pretty clear at this point that the lead agency for purposes of the city of Ojai is the city of Ojai.
So we're getting away from the minutes and into another discussion. I know we've provided a memo from the city attorney that addresses that issue, and it's not really relevant to whether these minutes are accurate.
Well, it is relevant because they're not accurate.
So, but what those people said at that meeting, what the fire representative said, is not, we can't modify what they said to match a definition of a term.
No, I understand that, but Mr. Vega, these minutes are being presented as a consent item for this board to vote on and for me to sign afterwards.
Right.
And as such, they're not accurate. They invoke policy positions that are not the policy of this board or, to the best of my knowledge, the policy of the city council. So as such, I'm not only taking exception to that, but saying, okay, this is a waste of everyone's time because we now have to go through it. I have to edit it to my recollection. The other members of the board will be doing that as well. And I'd like to just make the point that going forward, while I don't mind doing that, I prefer that is, we got better things to do, all of us.
We'll make our best efforts moving forward to make sure these are accurate.
Exactly.
We'll make it clear that it's not to be editorialized.
They're just minutes at this point. Okay, so having said that, that's consent item number 1, and it's being carried forward for review and comment and editing by the board, Building Appeals Board in general, and the chair in particular, I guess. Okay, so having said that, our next item is discussion item is the fire hazard map. There isn't a staff report on it, so I guess we launch right into it. Do you have any comments, anyone?
We have no comments.
Okay.
I have no comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just quickly, I'm sure we'll get into this at some point as well, but the Building Appeals Board fire map recommendations went to council yesterday. The end result was council accepted the recommendations and directed staff to work with the CAL FIRE and Ventura County Fire District to submit comments when the updated map is released. So I know Chair Ulrich, you and I have briefly discussed this, but I just want to take a chance or take an opportunity. I know we have this item on here at your request, but I just wanted to remind the BAB that there are pending items assigned from council at the July 16th meeting. And I think the best way for the BAB to make an immediate positive impact is to address those items. And one of those items is to update and amend the building code to address some of these fire concerns, which I think is on the agenda and is something that could make an immediate impact. So obviously you're free to discuss, but just want to make sure everybody was clear that that was what occurred yesterday. So.
Okay, before I respond to that, does anyone have any comments they'd like to make regarding the staff report that was presented to council as ostensibly the position or work product of this board? Mr. Daddy?
I have a number of comments regarding last night's council meeting. to the comments where the BAB made suggestions to council. I guess I'm a little frustrated with the fact that our map, the one we currently use, was put together in 2007, as though brush doesn't grow and trees don't fall over and things don't die, and we don't have prolonged droughts. So this thing is 11 years old. CAL FIRE was too busy to update the map in 2015 because they were putting out fires. So we're going to have a review that's going to come one of these days, and if it's as timely as the last map, it bothers me that the city is waiting to get that review. And I hope there's a clear understanding. The clear understanding is, as we had all the people here from the fire, a ton of them, CAL FIRE, that they're going to go ahead and make their map, and they're going to present their map to us. The interesting thing is that the city is 75 years old, older, and it doesn't have its own map. The thing I thought even more interesting was that we draw a line from Mercer and Pleasant on the northeast side of the city, and it travels left and south. It travels west and south over to Foothill Lane, and that's where we draw the line. The 220 odd homes that are above that line are in the severe area. And what one of our prior reports say is that fires don't follow maps, and they don't follow lines. And when we designate one half of the street in the fire zone and the southern part of the street, 25 feet across the road, is not in the fire zone, and we have 300-foot flames, I see Doug is there smiling in the audience. I'm just kind of wondering how in the world we could ever come up with something that appears to be that ridiculous. There seems to be a need for a clear delineation. So we go from zero fire to absolutely critical, very high, and there's no shades of anything. There's no yellow shades, there's no other shades. We just go from zero to max. When I listened to the council report last night, what confounded me was there wasn't an option other than waiting for CAL FIRE. That CAL FIRE map may not be adopted till 2020. And we only survived as a community because the wind wasn't blowing out of the north. That's the only reason. There is no other reason. And there is nobody that can dispute that. That's a fact, and that's just the way it is. Had that wind come down out of the north, down out of the hills, we would have had critical issues. As I looked at the report on the BAB, and I took a look and saw what council spoke about, was the fact that the city is working with CAL FIRE and working with Ventura Fire to do brush mitigation. And what confounds me is if we don't have an alternative to increase other portions of the map to severe, very high, or moderate, what brush are we talking about removing when it doesn't appear to exist on a map to be a hazard? So one of the things that I think would help is those areas that are under study, and Mr. Chair Ulrich and I did meet with the three people of the fire division, including the chief, and we talked about certain areas running from Camp Comfort all the way up through Stewart Canyon, where Barranca is, all the way up Foothill. We have some pretty severe areas, and a lot of those areas are going to have to be thinned out. It would appear, as we look at this map, that the city should concern itself, and the city should take a recommendation. We can take a Crayola, and we can put it on a map in different colors and show you where they're going to go in and remove the vegetation, and those areas should be designated high. The other thing that I'm really confounded in, I profess that I've been in insurance and building and fires and recovery and all this stuff for 36 years, and there's a couple of passages in this report that was at City Council last night that even I can't understand. And it talked about changing the maps and making the codes changed and waiting. And I really don't understand why we would do that. So I'm not understanding, and I'd like to ask the building official, what specifically is going to trigger, and I did have an extra copy printed for him and Mr. Vega, what specific items this triggers and how this fits in. And so, Tom, you want me to put you to the right passage? You know which line I'm talking about?
You can point it out to me.
This had to do with the statement that about waiting for the map and what was going to happen and how the map was going to change the building components. And this isn't on number 6. Let me see where it is. Sorry, I didn't mark this thing down earlier.
So I think I understand what you're referring to. So what we're saying is that what staff is recommending is to implement the fire building regulations codes that we were talking about, was the next agenda item, and put that on all residential buildings currently construction out there now. And that, because we do believe that there is a high risk of fire. And the way to prevent that currently, and the way to protect the most amount of people, is to use what we can most immediately. And that would be that we can change the building code to allow us to insert things like the Vulcan vent and things like that. Now, with the Vulcan vent, we can't specifically say the Vulcan vent, but we can describe it. And as a code, we can't call out a manufacturer, as we're all aware. But that's the most immediate thing. That's how we can protect the community right now, most immediately. Also in our staff report, we agree that it doesn't make sense that there's only red on the map. We 100% agree with that. But we need to pull in all the aspects that CAL FIRE looks at, and we need to do that would take time.
Okay, two questions.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're signed on it as having prepared it.
Correct.
Did you do it all by yourself?
I had some assistance with other staff.
Who helped you?
Mr. Vega did.
Excuse me?
Mr. Vega.
Okay, just the two of you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Now, this presentation of City Council appeared to miss fundamental elements. This isn't about about what your preference in a map is. The map we have, you're saying it takes time. We've had a lot of time. A lot of time has passed. We've had a couple of fires, major fires, that have threatened this community, while the existing fire map, which is supposed to notify people of the threat and the hazard, has been in existence, and nothing's changed. Matter of fact, until this board started bringing the issue up, there wasn't any interest in the fire hazard map. It took us, how many months? 4 months to actually get a copy of it from the former building official. So bottom line on it is, time is not something at this point that I'm inclined to entertain, because it's also a function of, in this community, time does not appear to have any limit. It just kind of goes on. That's number one. Number two, there seems to be a pushback here to the concept of a map developed by the community. In other words, by this board and with input from this board and anyone else. And we've had a few speakers here who are specifically intrinsically knowledgeable about fire hazard. In addition to the fire department, we've had Mr. Campbell and give a presentation on his software. And I appreciate that it all sounds very complicated to anyone who's not involved in that. I would gainsay that part of these recommendations do not observe the fact that city staff, since city staff's involved in almost every one of these recommendations, do not have the background of either the fire department or Mr. Campbell, or I would almost say a couple of folks who might be on this building appeals board now, and I don't mean in general knowledge, I'm talking about specific to the hazards of this community. Number 3, the biggest reason that I would say that would support the city having a fire map that at this point in time was all red is because we do not have a functional, certified, reliable fire water system. And the way the staff report addressed this is more palliative terminology that makes reference to, in response to the, and once again, this was criteria, Building Appeals Board criteria. This wasn't even a recommendation yet. The City of Ojai and the city sphere of influence lacks a certification of the adequacy or reliability of the present fire water delivery system. The recommendation from staff, which was agree that it is of utmost importance that the city have an adequate and reliable fire water delivery system, restated the position. Then came back and said, Casitas Water District is currently analyzing the status of the fire water delivery system. They've been analyzing that fire water since they came on board a year ago. There is no engineering study that has been produced that I'm aware of. There is no timetable or schedule for doing work. The only time that Casitas has been motivated to do any work was when it was pointed out to them by the Ventura County Fire Department that there weren't any fire hydrants on Mallory Way and the city was about to pave it. So let's tear up the street for several months and then engage in that exercise. But it had been that way for Mr. Quilisi about 70 or 80 years. Okay, and so there had been 50 or 60 years of fire departments, of building officials, of city councils not being aware of this condition, 25 structures with one 4-inch wharf head 1,000 feet away. Okay, time is not something that this community has an option. Notwithstanding the policy positions of others, this is, I believe, a statement of fact. Without a reliable fire water system, and that is not only in the city, but in the city sphere of influence, one that's certified by the current water purveyor and confirmed by the fire department, we don't have a fire water system. And that right there is sufficient, according to the state fire marshal, to consider the entire community at risk, considering we are surrounded by combustible fuel sources, are prone to winds, climate, topological, and geographic conditions that have threatened this community since it was established. So I'm looking at this staff report, and it's 8 pages. How many pages was our recommendations? I think it was 2. So the bottom line on it is it's 4 times more staff, and some of this stuff isn't entirely accurate either. So I'm kind of looking at what was presented to council that they discussed and made a determination on of sorts last night was not what was intended to be passed on from this board to council. In other words, I think I'll be generous here and say something was lost in the translation because the translation had its own editorializing. Yes, please.
May I continue before we have more discussion? I didn't finish this last point. Tom, on page 2 of 5, and this is a page you don't have. This is a page that Mr. Vega, Tom, and I have. This is out of last night's city council meeting.
I have my notes here on that.
The 4th paragraph, and I'm just trying to get a handle on this. Ultimately, the designation of a zone as a very high fire hazard severity zone has an effect on building standards, as new buildings would be subject to a higher standard of construction. This leads to higher construction or reconstruction cost and has a potential to increase insurance costs for buildings within these zones. Wow, I've been doing this for 36 years, and I'm not really sure what we mean by this section here.
When you implement codes and you make codes more restrictive, it's going to increase the cost. That's what I'm saying. And then when you increase, so there's an added factor. We have to present all factors in the potential factors. It is a potential factor that if we make the entire city red, that insurance rates may go up. I'm not an expert in that. It's a potential. I called around 2 insurance companies. I did not call yours, but I did call around 2 insurance companies and ask them how they look at fire maps. And if a local ordinance they said if a local ordinance had made it in a high severity fire zone, they may increase the insurance rate because the insurance coverage because of the higher risk. That's all we were presenting.
Okay.
Can I just add one thing? I just want to point out, when staff prepares these reports for council, we need to include positives and negatives of every argument. Staff is in agreement that the building codes need updated. We're not adding this section in to discourage that. We were just trying to disclose to council that there may be negative repercussions from it.
And the negative repercussions is that when a wildfire hits a town, 5 years after it's destroyed, like Santa Rosa, only 35% of the people will be rebuilt.
And Tom and I are both with
So
with
if
the
the
BAP.
9,000,
That's more
the
important. than this.
9,000 homes up there,
Yeah.
3,000 will be occupied in 5 years. The rest of those 6,000 families will still be displaced. And this is my issue. We live in a very precarious drought, high brush, small area, high wind, and we're lucky to be here. We are so lucky to have survived. And what I'm saying is, people can go around shooting guns, but it's against the law to do them around other people in a different proximity. And what I'm saying is, everybody needs to be safe enough so their home doesn't become a torch that burns up the entire neighborhood. Now, when I went around with some officials from the city, we saw where people with brand new addresses, when we give a B address, that is a new address, this is not a 1940 home, this is a new address, have built their structure less than 6 inches away from the property line. We have some real problems when we're going to go from property to property in a wind-driven area. And to say that it's going to cost $1 or $3 or $5 or $10 or $20,000 to do these code upgrades, I'm really sorry, but there's a lot of people. We've got 10,000 structures in the state of California that probably could have been benefited by having the screens where this embercast is reaching way ahead of the actual flame line, and we're putting these houses up before the fire department even has a chance to get there and get a hose lay. And so we're going to have to start taking a look at some of these things. The other thing I'm very unhappy with is that we've identified a number of areas within the city, again, where we know we need to do brush removal. If we know we have to do all this brush removal, we're working to do the brush removal, we know what we have to do, then I think the city should take a chance and go ahead and adopt a fire map. I'll get the Crayolas out and I'll have Mr. Campbell, who is in the fire unit here and does fire forecasting and is an expert, put together a map along with the fire department, let them look at it, and ask the city to adopt a map, because this is something that we really can't wait for another 7 or 8 years like we've waited patiently? Well, we waited, things burned around us. Again, this new map is supposed to come in 2020, and I don't think we have time. The other thing that I think is pretty interesting is with the fire, which is Ventura, which acts as CAL FIRE in our area. We don't have CAL FIRE here. They take over those responsibilities. We have all the reports and we have everything we need and we have all the government codes that was given to us, and it's pretty simple, 51-175, and we did this at the BAB a number of months ago and cited every code. It said, since fires ignore civil boundaries. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? They do ignore civil boundaries. We have all the language. We talk about local agencies, applies to cities, local agencies to impose restrictive fire and panic safety requirement. It is not the intent of the legislature to limit or restrict the authority of local agencies to impose more restrictive fire and panic safety requirements. And quite frankly, Ojai studies things to death, and we just don't seem to move along. And this is April, and we may be done with rain. I mean, the best and last chance we have is a tennis tournament. That's the only thing that seems to bring on the rain occasionally, and we're toast. And what I would like to do is I'd like to make a recommendation. Let City Council reject it. It couldn't be more inaccurate than the thing we call a fire map for Ojai today, which is incredibly inaccurate. And so let's go ahead and take a stab at it. And here's what I would say. Council can meet, put on the agenda, and in 2 weeks have an agendized item, and they can go ahead by resolution, modify it every other week on a Tuesday until we get it right. But having nothing and waiting for something that may never come, I think is absolutely the worst thing that we can do.
Can I,
Well, he wants to comment.
I don't want to interrupt.
That's
but-
okay.
I just want to make, or respond to a couple of the points. One thing, I do want to make sure to acknowledge that the board has brought this issue forward to council, to staff, to everybody else. That map was outdated. Everybody acknowledges that now. We have been in contact with CAL FIRE about updating the map. They know we're going to provide comments to them. So I don't want it to seem like this was all for no purpose, because it has brought it to everybody's attention, and there's already talk about how this is going to proceed moving forward. As far as the CAL FIRE map, I know there's still issues with wanting to create the own map. The water delivery system point, again, you've brought that forward. 2 city council members have been meeting with Casitas, asking them for time frames when they're going to do these tests. There's a plan or I won't say a plan, but there's already been talk about what will happen if they don't do those tests. So these aren't issues that are being brushed aside. They have taken too long. I don't know why that map is 11 years old at this point, but they're moving forward. So I just want to acknowledge that the BAB has been the one leading that effort, and it's moving forward, probably not as quickly as any of us would like. But the point I tried to make earlier, and the next item on the agenda after the fire hazard map, which is the updating the code for the fire safety issues, seems to me to be the quickest, most effective, easiest way to immediately implement some changes that will increase fire safety, and it'll address an item that council has assigned to the BAB. So my recommendation, you don't have to take it, is to focus on that and get that done.
Okay.
Mr. Vega, excuse me, Chair.
Hang on just a minute, Bob.
I proposed 4 meetings ago, 5 meetings ago, 6, 8 meetings ago, and we missed a half a dozen meetings. We went ahead and did all these codes once, and these aren't the same codes. And you're there, and I'll pull the tape, and we'll look at the tape, and then we'll look at the paper, and we'll say, that's not what happened. It's just pure fiction. This is not what's happening. What's happening on tape is different than what's happening on paper. We had a very long discussion about Class C roofs and Class A roofs. And the resolution was that we would go straight to Class A roofs and we'd skip the Class B roofs. And when I look at the report on the roofs, it says recommendation to write this into a B. How does that happen? This is like Orwell's 1984, where they come home and they rewrite the newspaper from, last year, and they change the history. It is confusing to me because I was the one that was the most adamant on it. We went ahead and took a vote. We did the resolution. And on this one, it goes Section 91301 Amendments, number 4. Class B or better. Class B has never been accepted.
May I ask where you're referencing?
Where the red A is.
Yeah. So this is the current code. This isn't a proposed code. This is the municipal code.
And we've made recommendations to revise it.
Right. Now this, and
Now we're looking at it again.
because I haven't seen it. I have no, now let me please explain. Okay? Because see, this is Title IX, correct?
Right.
There-
We're Title IX.
We're all Title IX. Title IX is a book, and there's chapters in it in the municipal code. One of the items that council has given us to do is to go over, revamp a one-time review with recommendations on Title IX. That's the next step. My envision is, let's get these fire code recommendations done, and then we get to the Title IX, and we take a chapter by chapter. If it's a short chapter, we do 2 chapters in a meeting, and just go through it and make the recommendations so that we can get it to council, so that we can do it all at once, so it's easier to follow and not pull each piece out. So that, because there are conflicts within Title IX. There are conflicts throughout Title IX. And if you look at it as a whole, then you'd be able to, instead of just trying to piece it together, you'll be able to put it all together, and we could present it to council in my opinion, a much faster and more accurate way. I mean, that's kind of what I'm envisioning, and I haven't had a chance to bring that to you. I want to get through these items. I want to get to the items that you guys want to, but it is my belief that if we get through the council items first, then that leaves more time for us to get to items that the board members want to talk about. I hope that makes.
It makes sense, except for several conditions that perhaps were prior to your tenure. Number one, when the issue of the fire map was first brought up, the response from the former building official was, "What do you need that for?" In writing. Okay? It took
I'm not
once again, what you're suggesting is we focus on ordinances. And the issue at this particular point is awareness, and it's also the council needs to make policy determinations, which haven't been made. Once again, that map, which we're all seem to be talking about, it took us 4 months to get, and it's worthless. It's virtually worthless because it does not depict, by any means of the stretch of the word accuracy, the conditions. And yet that is what we have because the city adopted it by default because nobody in staff or the city council at the time was even aware of it. Okay? So when it comes back to us, we're still tripping over that, and now staff is recommending waiting for the next one. Well, unfortunately, that also happened in 2015, and it didn't happen because CAL FIRE was occupied otherwise. So what the biggest issue of all of these meetings was the determination, which we asked of the city attorney, of city staff, and ultimately of the fire department, and CAL FIRE is, can we as the local agency, as, if you will, the lead agency, generate our own map? And everyone agrees that we have that the city council has the authority and power to adopt our own map that is specific to this community, which we should have, number one. Number two, you made some reference to earlier having talked or asked, about some other insurance companies about, very high fire, the implications to rates. Did you ask them by any chance whether, how rates are affected when an insurance company is made aware that there is no fire water system? Or it's unreliable?
That wasn't part of the question that I
Okay,
asked. No.
but that would have been an appropriate question to ask because that's part of this conversation. That's part of this conversation that keeps going around. If you don't have a system that's been certified as reliable, and there's been numerous instances when it has not produced, and even on testing, has produced insufficient pressure, insufficient volume, and certainly doesn't comply with what CAL FIRE requires presently, doesn't come anywhere near it, that would and should affect insurance rates. So if the council and the city would like to do something about that, about making sure there's manageable insurance rates for the community, the first place is to make sure we have, and that's in the city as well as the city's sphere of interest, a reliable fire water system. Just because everybody wants to believe it is reliable doesn't make it so. And numerous tests and numerous Public Records Act requests have proven that it is not adequately tested, it is not adequately vetted, and every time a testing methodology is applied, it is one that does nothing more than prove that there's water in it.
Mm-hmm.
You have a
Yes.
comment?
Well,
Chair,
yes.
can I get back to the rest of this?
Well, let's,
my
she's
turn.
been waiting for
All
a
right,
moment.
Gail.
Let's,
Sorry about that. In reference to what you were just saying, one of our former mayors lost his property because the fire hydrant right in front of his house didn't work. And we have been arguing that for a long time. I was very upset because I was at the city council, as you know, sitting right in front of you last night. I couldn't believe what staff was saying. I won't name names, but so much of it was just caught me off guard. And first of all, we were not able to do our last meeting because we had an appeal. We might have studied that fire map and been able to make a broader recommendation to the city, but we didn't have that opportunity because of the way the scheduling went. But I was really surprised and disappointed to hear what staff was saying. So I'm not going to get into specifics because, go ahead, Bob.
And I'm not understanding what's going on, and I hope this isn't, I'm bewildered, actually. We went ahead and took this on in 2010. I have the issue here. We did this a half a dozen times. I think I just heard that the building department is taking on the code itself, and then you'll present it to us. You folks are rewriting Title IX and looking to the chapters and redoing this like this one thing I said. Is that correct?
No.
What did I miss, Tom?
No. What I said was, in the
We're going to do it.
in here, in the agenda today, I have attached the fire code for residential, for high severity fire zones, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and for residential code. And what that is for your review to amend so that we can present the amendments to council.
But we're going to amend it.
Yes, based on
Chapter
your
by
record.
chapter.
We're gonna start with the fire recommendations.
Okay.
Because that's one of the items. So you start with the fire recommendations, and then Title IX is the municipal code. And that, we're gonna go through chapter by chapter and amend, because that is one of the tasks given by council.
So Tom, our recommendation on the roofs,
Yes,
still out there, it's still.
100%. We just have to add, and we just add it to the code. The fire vents, they're written in there. There's an ASTM in the code section that I gave you. Everything is still on the table right now. We haven't changed the code. I'm giving you some place to start, okay? Because we already have a code written. We can't make it less restrictive, but we can make it more restrictive. And I just want to touch on one thing. The cost of construction, we have to include that, because to me, there's no there's no matter on the cost of construction. That's off the table when it comes to life and safety.
For safety purposes.
For safety purposes, okay? I mean, I just want to make sure that's clear. I just want to make sure that council's aware that when somebody's coming in for a small remodel, that we have to increase the cost of it because of that, and they're going to be upset. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just we have to make council aware. We get it all the time with Title 24 windows. I mean, I'm changing my windows and they have to meet energy requirements. I don't even have air conditioning. What's the matter? That's the way the code is written, and that's what we have to follow. I really want to make sure that you guys understand that I have no. It's just a state.
Because of the health and safety issues, you want to make council aware that these restrictions here could have an effect on somebody coming in wanting to do a remodel or a new building.
Right. It might limit the amount of construction because they wouldn't be able to afford the
Afford the whole
increased
thing.
cost. Now, and that's the only aspect I was getting at in that statement.
Well, let me pull this back. We did this in 2010, 6 times and didn't finish it. And so what I think we need to do is we need to go back and take a look at these things that are still pertinent. And when we get into the costs are going to be the cost. The health and safety is going to be the health and safety. And again, what we have is a propensity to talk things to death. I've been here long enough. I am shocked that we actually threw out Golden State Water. That's the one thing we actually really got done. Everything else we've talked to death. If we don't have a time frame and we don't have an implementation date, it's just not going to get done. So I don't want to waste any more time. We should adjourn the meeting unless we've decided we're going to go ahead and have a finished product, a deliverable, on an X date on the agenda to the council for recommendation and list the items. I think it's a waste of time. I've been through it 20 times, and it has never, ever, ever worked. And with the last year and a half with our prior building official, it was incredibly gruesome because we'd say, you know, we need a meeting every 3 weeks so we can keep on track because we got so much to do, and we'd go months and months and months with no meeting. And now we say we've got all these things to do. I mean, we've got codes in here from the 50s and before, and we're a very, very, very old community. Very old community. And aside from the fact that the water doesn't work, I personally know that I formed flow. And I personally know when we wrote that bond, we gave them $20 million to go ahead and fix this system that they knew for 8 years was broken before we actually bought it. And there's $20 million sitting there. This is the only city I know of that has money to do a project that's not being done. That's amazing. Everybody else needs money. We've got it ahead of time. We can't get anything done. It's shocking. But again, we need to come up with a time because if we don't have a time constraint, I'm looking at 2010. When we did that, when I called Dave Sapsis, who put the map together in 2010, the excuse I got was, well, it was a contracted, it was outsourced, we had a time frame, we were in a hurry, and we went ahead and adopted a map that we knew was totally inaccurate. I'm tired of that. I don't want to do that anymore. That's not what we need. Again, I don't think people understand. We came very, very, very close. And I have somebody sitting here, Doug Campbell, will tell you the biggest problem we have here is all these giant wood piles where all the embers go in and they catch your barbecue wood on fire, and it just goes like crazy. We lost house after house after house in Creek Road and Upper Ojai because they had such a giant fuel load. And we're not putting codes that says now you got to have a metal cover. I'm not asking for that. We should have a metal cover. So what I'm asking for is let's get some of these things. I think it's a lot more important. I've got a house I went over to that we had a 350-year-old tree fall down, and we've got a nice guy that owns it. He's a public official in the community. And I looked at the air conditioner and I took a picture of the plug where the plug has blown out because it's not a GFI and it's not a weather code. So that's all smoked out. And then we have a wire going from a switch that goes around, and it has a light bulb on it, and that's the front porch light, right? So sooner or later, we're gonna have to figure out what we need to fix to get this done. I understand people moved here to have little cabins in the old days and get away and run and hide. But we shouldn't allow that person to have something that's gonna burn down the neighborhood. And I don't want to come to any more of these meetings until we have clear direction, and it appears that we don't have clear direction or consensus from council as to what they want done and when they want it done. I mean, I remember those gruesome things with Libby Bowl, years, skate park, 15 years, all these other things. I don't want to do this anymore because we're on year 8. So if we can come up with a deadline, that deadline is August 1st, October 1st, November 1st. You know, let's do something, let's get a deliverable product, but we're just going to show up and we're going to look at a whole bunch of paper, we're going to kill another forest, and nothing's going to happen. So with that, I probably need to be excused for the night.
Okay,
Can I make
All
one
right.
point?
go ahead.
Yeah. So I wasn't working with the BAB when this came through from council, so I think I had assumed that everybody has it and is aware of it. If not, I'm happy to make a copy, but the document that I've referred to a couple times today is the council work plan for building appeals board that has dates, targets for completion assigned to them, which I'm in complete agreement. We need to sit down and put dates, realistic dates to these things, and we need to come up with an implementation plan. But if anybody doesn't have it, or if anybody could use a copy of it, like Tom said, the main point we're trying to get across, I guess, today is that we're trying to make sure that we're addressing these items that council has asked, because we do want this to be productive for, not just for us, but for, the council and everybody else. So.
Okay, so at this point, then we're looking at item. No, well, wait a minute. What are we doing about number 2? It's a discussion item. We've discussed it. Okay. What are we going to do? We're continuing this. Are we at this point? Because once again, this subject at this point is that the fire hazard map itself as a subject, as a discussion item, as a topic of voluminous emails and several meetings here is no further than it was a year ago when we first raised the issue and asked for the map. Okay, actually it's 13 months now. So having said that, what are we doing tonight? And once again, I'd like to make the point that the reason this issue is what I would call swirling is because there's a lack of something, whether it's interest, whether it's will, whether it's knowledge. At this point, there's been multiple meetings with some very knowledgeable individuals speaking here. I believe that this board has a pretty good handle on it. I know at least 2 of us have met with the Ventura County Fire Department, Fire Prevention District, the chief at least 3 times. We've gone out on our own and surveyed the sphere of interest as well as this community. And what do we want to do about this tonight? Or is this a continued item?
It's got to be continued.
Yes, I understand that. Any other comments besides continue?
The city said last night in the staff report that they were waiting for the draft map from the state.
Okay, we've been waiting from
Yeah.
that since
I don't
2015.
think that's a reliable anything at
Well,
this
I realize
point.
that.
No one has a sense of when
So
that's
how
going to
do
come
we work
out.
on a map that we don't have?
Well, no, I think what I'm saying is there's a reticence on the part of, I don't know who, I'm going to say at this point, I'm going to just say generally speaking, staff, to us doing anything about it, notwithstanding we've diligently gone through whether the city has the power and authority to generate its own city map as being the lead local agency.
They said we were supposed to.
They
Okay.
absolutely do. I've
If
got
we
all
do,
the state
then I am
statutes.
proposing that we draft one and as a recommendation to council, and council can discuss it and determine what they want to do about it.
Okay.
But once again, my approach to it is I'm not sure how we can characterize the gradations in this community without a reliable fire water system. And that's seems to be the issue that everybody ducks.
Well, what was said last night, the mayor, I think, said that the head of Casitas and the head of the fire department and Steve McClary should get together and work that out. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what was said last
And
night.
what kind of timeline do we have on that? Is that going to be before fire season, May 1st?
Is there a deliverable, and is there a date for that deliverable?
Well, they thought it was a good
in
idea,
that
but-
recommendation or that thought,
That's what we recommend,
okay?
is that the city do that, make that happen. Steve Wyrick did speak to it to some
So I think
extent.
we can make the recommendation, but we're not gonna be able to, I don't know how we can put a time limit on city council
You can't.
adopting
And
it.
that's okay.
No,
I think they can't adopt what's never going to be presented.
Yeah. As long as it becomes aware, I mean, we're aware of it, and now the public's aware of it, something's gotta be done.
This is the item that I was referring to earlier when I was mentioning that a couple of council members have started the process and have met. I don't have a time frame. Like you said, it's hard for me to tell council, give me your time frame. That's a little backwards, but
it's really not the issue, though. The issue is getting it in front of them, getting something. At this point, the staff has recommended waiting. Okay,
Not
it's
for the
irrelevant
Casitas
what it's
issue.
waiting for. It
not
just,
for the Casitas issue.
well,
But he didn't put a time limit on it.
there's no
Council's meeting.
deliverable. It'd be nice if you guys had a meeting. In the meantime, we still have an unsupported fire water system. I don't believe that, I mean, there may be some folks on the council who disagree with that assessment or analysis. And I would hope that the hydrant near their home was reliable and functional. And maybe if it's downhill from the rest of the system, just from the head of water, it would be adequate from a volume perspective. I don't know. But I have to say that there are parallel systems in this community as well, where Casitas has always maintained fire hydrants, and where formerly Golden State maintained the system, the city franchisee at the time, and one's pretty reliable, and one is regularly tested. And so Casitas is aware of what the parameters are for their own equipment and their own system. So the question is, how long is it going to take? There are no answers. There are good feelings and good intentions, but no answers, no deliverable determinations. Mr. Quillisi, you have a comment? As always, the best-dressed man in the room.
Thank you, sir. Just a suggestion at this point. I believe it's within the power of the board to appoint an ad hoc committee of members of the board, not to constitute a quorum of the board, so at most 2 members of the board, to go away and put together a draft fire hazard severity map for the city and bring it back to the board and let the board say yes or no, we'd like to pass this on. I think that way, and I have a sense of probably who the 2 members might be, but that way you can take an action tonight, decide to come back at the next board meeting, take a vote, and move something to the city council.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Judy?
I would agree with what Mr. Quillisi has recommended. I would also like to see the involvement of some of the community experts on that subject join into that committee, and we might get it done faster.
Okay, well, having said that, do we want to,
Take a vote on it?
well, let's, yes, propose an ad hoc, and
I would like to move that we form an ad hoc committee with 2 members from this board, and I would recommend that those members be Mr. Daddy and Mr.
Ulrich.
Pardon?
Ulrich?
Ulrich. Yes,
Jim,
them. Okay, and that they draft a preliminary new map and bring it back to the board, to this board at the next meeting for further recommendations.
And do you want to add to that you would like 1 or 2 members
Mr. Campbell.
outside, like Mr. Campbell?
Yes,
To be on that?
and those 2 board members will then reach out to the committee, to the community to increase their committee size with experts from the community.
Okay.
And
That's
I
the
would
motion.
second that, but my recommendation would be that they bring in Mr. Campbell, Mr. Doug Campbell from the community, who's an expert on fire.
So it would be those 3.
Yes, making
Okay.
it 3, right.
We'll take a vote.
Well, I would like to see more people than
Well-
that, but
Well, I think what happens is when we have an ad hoc, Mr. Vega, is it's limited to a non-quorum of this board.
Right.
We can have as many people as we want. We have 100 people.
Correct.
You know, we can go to, have a Chautauqua to do this thing, but we just can't have more than 2 members.
Right, that she
This
was only
board.
supposed to.
and we might ask for the Ventura Fire, the FRAP
Well,
group to come and
So
help.
we need some people from Ventura Fire,
Mhm.
and then we need at least a member, and I would propose Mr. Quillisi, the vice chair of the Planning Commission, because we want to get those people that have been involved. Mr. Quillisi's been involved in the fire suppression system, in the sprinkler system. He understands the community. He understands where we didn't have the fire units and what happens when we do these things. So, you know, it's something where we can look at a map, and I would just say that, hey, this thing needs to expire in a month. I don't like ad hoc committees going on forever. It's not a canasta party. It's
Well,
something where we
the-
need to
the-
get
the
it done.
The proposal is to come back with work product at the next meeting, okay?
Okay.
A proposed map, or at least if, a draft. And if for some reason that we can't come to that, I don't really know why we wouldn't, but at this point, if we can't come to that, then we will present our progress and then go from there. Okay, well, let's take a vote on this then.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
And what I've got here, if I understood you on the motion, is Daddy, Ulrich, Campbell, Quillisi, and a fire official? There are 5 members.
I was proposing the 2 specific members from our board,
That's
Right.
really all that has to be.
and that's all we have to do.
Right.
They are encouraged to reach out.
Okay. All right.
That's
So
necessary.
given that as a motion, Board Member Daddy? We're voting.
Aye.
Board
We're
Member
going to do a roll call?
Murphy?
Okay.
Yes, we have a motion.
Board Member Farmer?
Yes.
And Chair Ulrich?
Yes.
Yes, and so it's unanimous.
Okay, so that's discussion item number 2, right? Discussion item number 3, fire resistance construction amendments to the City of Ojai Building Code. Now, do you want to change the sequencing here and address item number 4? Since there were some comments that were made at the last meeting that related to,
Do you have anything for 4?
I read that and thought it was.
yes, about the specifically Building Appeals Board ordinance of the city. We don't have the text here. So,
Okay, well, I would propose that we
Carry
have,
that.
we have a couple of amendments to this. One of the amendments is, and I don't know that
This is state law, and it's unalterable. The city has 45 days, so if Mr. Quillisi comes in and files an appeal on a construction issue, which is a disagreement with the interpretation of a code, and he files an appeal, wants to go to the appeal board, the city has up to 45 days to grant that. Failure to grant that gives no penalty whatsoever for failing to provide the time frame that is printed as part of the ordinance. And so a couple of things I think needs to happen. The appellant has 10 days to get back. The city has 45 days. I think this is heavy-handed and overbearing on the community. And these statutes are here to protect the community from an overbearing government. So on C, it says within 45 days of receiving an appeal, the building official shall schedule. I think that needs to be changed. C needs to be changed to 10 days. And if we're going to put days, let's don't do it Ojai style. Let's say what kind of days they actually are. And those days needs to be business days, because we don't know if it's business days, holidays, concurrent days. You know, we always leave these things out of everything we do in Ojai, so we can always argue about what is. And so I think that needs to be 10 business days on item C. On B, it says the appeal shall be filed by the building official no later than 10 days after the receipt of the notice of the determination, and that's fine. And I think that within 45 days of receiving an appeal, that would be changed to
But that
10.
10-day reference in B should also be calendar days.
Yeah, everything has to be calendar days. We just can't leave guest days. The other thing is I believe that
Or was that calendar or
Calendar
business?
or business?
business days, not calendar days, because
Did I say calendar?
there's a lot of holidays. There's a lot of holidays where we take off Friday because of Thursday, and we take this off because of the Monday. And
I just want to make sure I had it correct.
yeah,
that's all.
business days. Because
That doesn't include Saturday and Sunday.
those aren't business days. So heaven forbid, but see, where it says 10 days, over Thanksgiving, it would
10
be
business days.
reduced to 5 days.
Yeah.
That's all you'd have. It'd be reduced to 5 days. That's just not fair. So if everybody gets 10 days, they're business days, we need to absolutely reduce the fee from $500 to $25. That is absolutely egregious, and what it does, it's an estoppel. It stops the people in their tracks. It's overbearing. And here's what I would say. Take a look at everything opposite. The council will say, well, look, if we give everybody $25, then everybody will appeal. Well, then that says we're doing a pretty lousy job if everybody's going to appeal. If money's the only issue, then we really are pathetic. And so $25 is enough to fill out a piece of paper, and it should be $25 instead of $500. $500 is something that I will personally go out and write a new initiative and get the city to change if, in fact, they can't take a real valid suggestion. The other thing that seems to be egregious, it appears to me to be, you know, I don't want to say malicious. It just appears to be, it appears to be unbelievable that this ordinance could be so pathetic. So what it says is if Mr. Campbell comes in and he has an issue where we've got a roof issue and he needs a permit, and the contractor says, Mr. Campbell, you can do this. The building official comes and he looks up and says, no, you really can't do that for this reason. Mr. Campbell is adamant that he thinks that maybe there's an error that's been made, and he files an appeal. And he pays us $500 at the time, and he waits for 45 days. And then he waits for 50 days. And then, like this last thing I tried to get from 2010, he's been waiting since 2010. There was no penalty on the city for non-performance. There is nothing in the code that gives relief to the appellant applicant for the lack of performance from this city. And unless I'm wrong, Mr. Vega, please correct me on that. Is there any relief?
Well,
So there's no relief. I find that to be incredibly incredibly oppressive. I mean, that's why that's why we got rid of Golden State and King George, right? We said when government will not take care of its people and they will not listen and they won't treat the people fairly, then it's trying to get rid of them. And so I can't believe that we have an ordinance, that we can have a city council that's going to allow this kind of ordinance with no relief to the citizens. So that's what I have to say.
And in section B, there is a reference to the appellant. Failure to timely request an appeal constitutes a waiver of the right to a hearing before the Building Appeals Board and a failure to exhaust administrative remedies. But there is no counterpart on the part of the city. So arguably, that should be struck or modified in such a fashion that it levels the playing field. Because this says that failure to meet the 10 days, and at this point now it's been modified, we're proposing that we modify it to 10 business days. But nevertheless, failure to timely request an appeal constitutes a waiver of the right to a hearing. Okay? This makes perfectly logical sense to me. You have to have some parameters, you have to have some implications, some consequences. But where are the consequences to the city? So is it possible to balance it in such a fashion? I doubt that the city's willingly going to say, yeah, you know, we're gonna default on the appeal because we didn't hit our dates. But having had some recent experience with that, it is a little frustrating to be on the receiving end of something that goes on to 70 days. So is there any way that we can balance that?
Well, and I would say regardless, I believe that if the city can't perform at the same level they expect the taxpayers and the citizens to perform, they should have the same penalty.
Well, yeah, but what's the penalty in this?
The penalty is when the appellant doesn't perform, they lose.
So you are saying
It should be
default.
equal for the city. When the city doesn't perform, they should lose and default.
Right, well, I'm sure the city attorney's gonna weigh in on that one a little bit.
And I'm sure the
That might be-
citizens are
that
going to
might-
weigh in on that one too.
Yeah, okay.
That may, there may be a life and safety issue. I understand. No, I understand. I mean, and this is just to schedule the appeal, correct? The 10 days is to schedule it. I'm asking
Yes,
a question. It's to schedule it because we have to schedule it and then we have to prepare our appeal and does the applicant.
Yes.
And I honestly think that's fair. I just, to have it within 10 days. However, I don't know what the recourse would be if they didn't. So if you would like to come up with some ideas.
Well, if you don't have that, if that is struck, how does it affect things? It's simply then left, the appeal shall be filed with the building official no later than 10 business days after receipt of written notice of the determination and the appeal provisions of this chapter. Okay? What happens if the next line is left off? It is struck.
Well, it seems like the immediate issue with striking that would be that, in essence, you're giving somebody an unlimited amount of time to appeal.
No, it says you have 10 days. The question then is, what happens if they exceed 10 days? Here it spells out failure. It means as a remedy, they have lost all remedies. So perhaps at that particular point, instead something could be inserted here as in a reasonable explanation shall be submitted. I don't know. I'm asking the question. This completely obviates any options. There's got to be some middle ground.
I do feel like it'd probably be easier to do take the other tack that you were talking about and putting more of a burden on the city to be responsive,
Okay.
rather than lessening the burden.
Well,
on-
and
I'm okay with that.
it doesn't need to be that way. What it needs to be is fair and balanced. And here's the issue. Tom needs time. I got that. You know, the government grinds. It takes time. It shall not be unbalanced. It shall not be oppressive, and this is. And so here's what I would say. Let's do something that makes reasonable sense. If the city really needs 21 business days or 21 calendar days, if it needs 21 days instead of the 45 days, balance it. If the city needs 21, the appellant needs 21. If the appellant forfeits because they don't do certain things, then the city forfeits. The city should not hold itself above the residents, and it clearly does. And that's clearly wrong. And
Saying this forfeit, as far as the city would step up and
Lose the-
regardless of the appeal.
well, I don't care about the appeal. The city has to follow the same standards as the people it is supposed to serve. It doesn't.
Well,
It makes the people subservient to the, to a different set of standards. That's what I'm saying, different set of standards.
And the building official has indicated, yeah, but you know, what happens if this is a genuine health and safety issue? Okay? Well, in that case, then I would submit, if it's a genuine health and safety issue, that it's incumbent upon the city to get their appeal together, okay, within whatever time limits get landed. Because if you default because of your own inability as a public agency, you know, it shouldn't happen. That's what government's about. It shouldn't happen. If you're saying there's a possibility, it takes all of the balance and fairness and impetus to have balance and fairness away, as it usually is. It's in the hands of the government and not on the part of the citizen appellant. So I can't, you know, say, well, somebody could get away with a building, a health and safety violation. It just needs to be timely brought.
If it's reasonably written, no one's going to get away with anything. If it's reasonably addressed for both sides, there shouldn't be any fear of that.
Yeah, the issue for me is I don't see that passing city attorney and council as far as they're gonna say if there's a building that is a serious fire risk and due to whatever reason, let's say, you know, I don't mean to use it as an example, the last time it was the week of the Thomas fire.
Would you put that in context of an appeal? Because
Right.
that's a different issue. If, you know, what we do is we drive bulldozers through those houses, like the Chevrolet property. We find them $100,000, we condemn them, we drive them through. We beat this little old lady up across the street and made her dismantle her house. So I've never seen that to where there would actually be an appeal. So when we actually have a fire trap, they're gone. But help me understand in the context of an appeal. Somebody has a disagreement in what the code is. That's what the appeal is about. Why would it take all of this time with an interpretation of code when we're actually talking about certain code violations, not building things? So if you could give me an example.
Because the appeal comes before a permit, everybody's aware of that. So because the appeal comes before the permit, there would be no risk at the time unless there was a health and safety issue, in which then it would be more than likely a red tagged building or something.
Right. You'd condemn it.
But what I'm concerned about putting verbiage in there is, I don't like going here, but is if you do an appeal, if somebody puts in an appeal and a natural disaster happens and the resources of the city are held up because of that, that's actually an issue, because we couldn't, our resources are used elsewhere during a disaster, then we couldn't follow through on the appeal.
You couldn't come to a determination.
We may not.
It's a big distraction. I would submit that those circumstances being extraordinary would, absent extraordinary circumstances could also be
that would have
included.
to. I would. Yeah.
Well, okay, because when you're talking about an attenuated potentiality, that doesn't, it's kind of like, that doesn't justify governmental overreach.
Can we go back again? What I'm asking for is where we have an appeal on the health and safety, because here's what I'm looking at. My thought was, when we have a health and safety, we just go ahead and knock it down. We always just knock it down. That's our first reaction in this community. The second thing is, is there's no appeal to a red tag through the building appeal board at all. That's a health and safety. We're not going to get involved in that. What we're going to get involved in is when somebody applies for a permit to build or alter, and they have a difference of understanding of what the interpretation is, that's when we get involved. So I don't see where those two things are. The other thing is this. When we have a disaster, you can't appeal because the building department or community development department doesn't issue a permit fast enough. That's something that's not appealable to the building appeal board. And so what I'm saying is that I don't see where making it even where the city has to have the same responsibility for performance that they impose upon a citizen is egregious.
What I was referring to as a health and safety issue would be in the plan check process. So
Again, the permit's not been issued.
right, but
or
that's-
denied.
That is the appeal. That is
Okay.
the appeal. And during that, I'm just using, okay. Let's use an egress window in a bedroom, okay? Let's say there's a closet in there and the building official has determined that to be a bedroom. They're calling it a den. Now, by all definition, that is a bedroom in the opinion of the building official, okay? Somebody wants to come and appeal that. They do their due diligence and get their appeal in within the 10 days. Now, the building department has 10 days to respond. This is what I'm saying. And then, so that would be the life and safety issue.
Okay, then Tom, what I'm saying is, then make it 21 days, but don't put the burden on the citizen above the city. And that's what I'm saying is unfair. You know what? If you want to have 45 days, then give the appellant 45 days. All I'm saying is make it fair and equitable. It is not fair. It is not equitable.
Well, and I still, 45 days is way too much time.
I'm saying
Once you
that
stack on-
45 versus 10 is not fair.
Okay, and once you stack it on, what you're actually saying, once you make those 10 days into business days, you're already a month before there would be, at the earliest, there would be an appeal hearing. So that's a pretty decent period of time when somebody's stopped work and has to take time out of their life to assemble an appeal, and as well as for staff. So whether it's 10 or whether it's 21, I don't think it should be 45.
And the project is stopped. No, I'm just trying to say it needs to be equal. I don't
Yeah,
like the
but
45 now.
I wouldn't, I disagree with this 45 days here as it is.
No, I do.
Certainly if that
I
becomes
said it-
45
I said it should
business
be.
days.
I said it should be 10.
Okay, all right.
And I
so-
think it should be 10, and I think
So-
that the council ought to go ahead and explain to the community why
All right,
it's so biased.
we have anyone want to do a motion then as far as a particular language that can be incorporated into a recommendation? And then obviously the city attorney and Mr. Vega and staff will look at it before they, and perhaps bring it back to us before it gets submitted to council. Are you making any? Okay, good. So in any case, does this make, okay, anyone have a language they'd like to propose?
Don't you have to also put what happens if the city staff doesn't, failure for a timely response on behalf of the city staff? We don't have that yet.
Well, I mean, here's the other part of it. When you're saying, a default on the part of the city in an appeal, there is recourse to, and that's called court.
100%.
So the city can always take that applicant, if it's serious enough health and safety issue, that the city shouldn't have lost an appeal over, because by default, then they could take that individual to court. There are recourse. The issue here is just trying to make the city's appeal process, as required under state law, something that actually works not to the detriment of the applicant, or the appellant in this instance. So, from my perspective, this could be written that the same thing. Failure to timely request or schedule an appeal constitutes a waiver of the right to a hearing before the Building Appeals Board. That's before each, because ostensibly the city and the appellant are equal. And a failure to exhaust administrative remedies. That's for both parties. Okay? This isn't a situation where somebody's going to get away with an egregious health and safety violation because the city missed its date without the city having a recourse, which is the same police powers that the city always has, which is to go to a judge and say, we need relief.
So what you're saying, Bill, is that item number C, within 45 days, should be changed to 10 days? Is that what you're saying? Of receiving an appeal?
10 business days.
10
That's
okay,
2
well,
weeks.
10, whatever.
Okay,
21.
so that's
And-
the appellant.
Yeah, I understand
And then
that.
the
I know,
city's got
but-
another 10 days to respond to it.
So you're
By
limiting,
schedule.
you're limiting 10 days on the city to come back with an appeal, to come back with with an approval or whatever they're gonna
A
do.
response.
Yeah, right.
Or,
A
and in this
response.
case, it's filing, it's scheduling a,
Just set the date,
Or on the
Tom.
other, or you could change number B, the appeal shall be filed with the building official no later than 45 days and leave the 45 days at number C. I just can't see putting 10 days to come back with, the city's
Then
gotta come
21.
back.
Then
with
make it 21.
or make it 20. You're talking, we're not talking, now we're talking
I
business
thought
days.
I thought we were talking
Business.
about 10 days. Somebody said 10 days.
Tom, you've had a construction project going in this community, and they stall for months and months and months and months. I don't think they should be able to stall. We have people working, we have things in progress, we've got workers, we've got things going down, we've got weather issues, material issues, interest, we've got costs, and 45 days on a construction job is how much? And then when they don't perform and then they miss the 45 days, there's no penalty. And so therefore, there's no incentive for them to perform. And so what I'm trying to say is all the onus is on the appellant, and I don't believe that the city should have that much of an advantage over a regular citizen when it comes to an interpretation difference of a code.
Well, I would feel more comfortable if it was, obviously, 10 days is not that much, but to keep it fair on both parts, maybe 30 days for the appeal to be filed through the building official and 30 days for the city to come back and with their decision.
And those are business days?
Those are business days,
Okay,
right?
well, business days, 30 business days.
That's
is
45
6
days.
weeks.
Month and a half.
All right.
And now you've got, and that's stacked, so that's a month and a half and a month and a half. Now you've got 90 days. And I've heard people here, contractors and architects saying the appeals process is too long, they can't wait, time is money.
Well, I think the big issue was the appeal fee. And we talked about lowering that. We talked about lowering that 2 months ago.
That's not the
We talked
primary
about
issue, though. They're
Right,
kind
no,
of-
I understand that.
And
But,
that's part of it. And what I'm saying is if the fee's $25, I don't want council to come back. I would hope they wouldn't come back and say, if we lower it to 25, then we're going to have all kinds of appeals. If we have all kinds of appeals, that means we got all kinds of problems. And therefore, that $25 would bring these forth, and it would be healthier to get these things out.
Okay, then I'll make a proposal here. How about 20 business days respectively for both sides? Okay? That's still 2 months.
Calendar days.
Excuse me.
If you're going to go to 20, make it calendar days. Because that's 2 months. That 2 months is too long to hold up a project.
Okay, so you're proposing,
If at that time, 10 business days or 20 calendar days is pretty close, getting closer.
I'd rather go the 20 calendar days. I think 10, I understand what you're saying, but I just think 10 days is too short
okay,
of a period of
so
time.
hence the 20, but now we're talking 20 calendar days.
Calendar
Okay.
days.
Whatever we're talking
All right,
about. what is it?
okay, all right. Okay, so that's subsection B, 10 is changed to 20. Okay, and after that is calendar. Okay, now, and then we'll jump to subsection C, within 20 calendar days instead of 45. Okay, now, then, do we have any thoughts on then making second sentence in B applicable to both parties? Okay? That's applicable to both the appellant and the city. That's timely request or schedule an appeal constitutes a waiver. Okay? That seems, now that we're out at 20 calendar days, that seems reasonable for everybody. Okay, so I would submit then that the second sentence should read, failure to timely request an appeal by the appellant or schedule an appeal by the city constitutes a waiver of the right to a hearing before the Building Appeals Board and a failure to exhaust administrative remedies. That's not legal remedies, that's just administrative remedies. So is that, can we make that into a resolution? Okay, any questions about that, Mr. Vega? Or Mr. Just, okay, all right. Shall I say, read it again?
I have it.
Sure.
I just want to, ask one question. Are you proposing to put this forward before reviewing the entire, as a resolution to council prior to reviewing the entire Title IX? Because this falls under Title IX.
Yeah, because this is very specific to the Building Appeals Board, very specific to recent hearings and recent processes. So at this point, yeah, separate.
Separate. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
clear that we're presenting that properly.
Yep.
And-
Well, that's because it's discussion item number
Do you have
4.
something to say?
I don't, want to sound like a broken record. I know you're probably tired of hearing it, but I think the reason why we asked that is on the council work list, they asked for this Title IX to come back one time in its entirety. Just making the note.
That's kind of like, well, I better not.
Okay.
tell
We
you.
haven't had all that many appeals. If this is delayed until we come to agreement on everything, I don't think it'll really cause a problem.
Well,
It's the board's
Well,
decision.
there's two, actually, Mr. Vega, there's 2 references on the task list to Title IX. So, and neither of them say, you've got it in the form of a stipulated term sheet on item number 7, Title IX, for widow references, contradictions, lack of needed updates, and so on, okay? And then you've got item number 2, which is for areas inside the sphere of influence, which are also inside the city limits. Make recommendations for additions to the municipal code, especially Chapter 3, Title 9, with goal of rendering consistency and high standard of fire safety for the recommended hazard zone. That one has to do with very specific, is more specific to the fire safety issue, because it also makes reference to the Ventura County Fire District. In the form of a stipulated term sheet list. Okay, the problem with this, looking at it that way, is everything that's of significance like this is very specific, gets lost in the chaff and way, okay? And I'd rather not lose things like that. So this is just, because it's specific to the building, it's the only section that is specific to the Building Appeals Board, as in the conduct, the scheduling, and the processing of an appeal. And as such, I would submit that it should be a standalone thing because it is what governs this board.
Board's discretion.
Okay? So we're all right with that? So roll call on that one then, please.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, I made a motion. Someone
Okay.
seconded it, I thought?
no.
Did Tom second it?
Yeah, I second it.
Yes, so,
Okay.
I,
Question, is the reduction of the $500 file fee to $25 within this motion, or does it need to be a separate motion?
that's a good question.
should be included.
Okay, so should be included.
And we need
Do we
to
all, are we all good on $25 or
No.
$50?
No, I'm not.
What are you good on?
I'm good on $100.
All right? $100?
It's better than 500.
Okay. 100?
I'm okay with that.
I know this is near and dear to your heart, but can you compromise on 100?
Yeah, I'll compromise on anything.
Okay, so
Other
there
than
we're going to
500.
revise, and the interesting thing, of course, is the only place that that number shows up is on the city's list of fees and costs, not in this. So it would be nice if it was in this, since this is where everyone would know to go to see it. So if we could, where would be the best place to admit that, would be either to put in,
That should be an A.
excuse me?
That should be an A.
Okay, yes, it should be at the end, and add a different.
Appeal shall be in writing, state the ground for the appeal, and be accompanied by
By a
a
$100 fee.
$100 fee.
Do we want to mention that it's refundable in case they are approved in that? Which is the case, right? I understand if they're approved, then their $100 goes
It's
towards their permit
refundable,
fee,
yeah.
right? Do we want to put that in here?
Sure, put that in refundable
Yeah.
if the appellant prevails.
Yes.
Yes,
As
that's
a-
the way.
Oh, sorry. As a practical matter, the reason why cities don't put the fee in the ordinance is because the fee schedules are adopted regularly and the ordinances are not.
Yeah.
So you end up having to re-adopt the ordinance every time.
Well, in that
the fee
case,
changes.
we encounter all the time the widow, because of just that condition. At this point, then it would be an old stale fee that I don't think anybody's gonna have a problem with if the tide of time moves on. Okay, I would like to include it and recommend it, simply because an appellant who's looking at this section needs to be able to see what's involved in an appeal, rather than the information being in 3 different places in the municipal code.
Of course, Jim, if this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You could also put something in there about see current fee schedule, and that way they
Yeah,
would
but
be
then you gotta be
alerted.
able to access it, okay? All I'm saying is, you
Yeah,
know.
this fee, Jim, would be included in the pamphlet, right, or whatever we have out there for the people who come in and,
Appeal.
Yeah, we could add it to the
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
As one option.
so they would know when they're, yeah.
That's another
Yeah.
option.
Yeah, I just thought the $25 was a little bit too low, because you'd get I just afraid you'd get too many people coming in. I mean, not that they are not, entitled to it, but I just think the $100 is more.
Yeah, and if you made a good point that's refundable, which doesn't mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, but if they're entitled to the refund, or to the money, they'll get the refund.
Right.
Okay, that,
Put it $25.
is that, and where is that codified? The refund?
Oh, the refund, it's in the fee schedule right now, so that could be something that's either added to the,
It actually says
Here or
it's
to the
refundable if it
Right.
prevails? Okay, right, fine. I don't think that necessarily needs to be in this, because that could always change from a policy perspective. Mr. Quillisi?
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make one small suggestion in the motion that is currently on the table. If you say 20 calendar days for either party, then a decision by the CBO on a Monday requires a response by 2 weeks from Sunday. And likewise, an appeal filed on a Monday requires a response by the city 2 weeks ahead on Sunday. If you're going to use calendar days, I would suggest 21 calendar days.
Thank you.
Or 15 business days, which is equivalent.
I like the 15 business days.
Thank you.
The calendar.
Okay.
Should we restate the motion?
Well, let's get this piece.
Too complicated. 15 calendar days, is that what we all agree on? No.
No,
15 business days.
Or 21 calendar days?
Business.
Pick
days.
one.
15 business days.
I like business days, because for all the reasons that anyone could say, well, we had a long weekend, there's holiday, blah, blah, blah. Calendar days are hard to count. Business days, that the city's open, makes sense.
15 is 3 weeks.
Okay,
That's
then we're
plenty.
going to do 15, 15 business days. We certainly appear to be willing to take your recommendations. You need to keep them coming. Okay, so that's in both section B, and C. Okay, 15 business days. Okay, are we good enough now that we can vote on this resolution?
No?
No, so I'm back to the 21 days. We
It's
We
15.
went,
I
yeah,
think.
right, I understand that's 15 days, which works out to 3 weeks, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you leave off Saturdays and Sundays.
Whatever days the city is open
Office.
Yes, city's
for
open,
business.
open on Fridays, or the city open? They are, open, okay. I thought you're closed on half a day on Fridays, no? Oh, okay,
Okay,
thanks.
But they are closed for about 25 state and federal holidays, okay?
okay.
11.
11?
Call, please.
Roll call. Board Member Denny.
Yes.
Board Member Murphy.
Yes.
Board Member Farmer.
Yes.
Chair Ulrich.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Okay. Then we're up to item number 3, fire-resistant construction amendments to the City of Ojai Building Code. Now, does anyone have markups here? You want to start with just at the top and we'll go through it?
Let's go to R3363, page 1 of 8.
3363, smoke alarms?
Yep.
Gee, I had stuff on the page 2 of 2, but okay.
I have a question. Is this coming into Title IX under the Housing Board? Certainly isn't the Appeal Board. Is it, because this is a daycare residence, and it appears this isn't a single family or an R or a trailer park or a condo or those other things that are generally listed in our purview.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're just looking at section R337. It's just that the rest of that is on that page in the code book. I apologize. I should have blocked that off. I apologize. It's starting at R337.
Okay, because that's a lot of reading when you start and you block, and then I got to look up the code and go,
Yeah.
large family daycare homes.
Correct. So it would be starting at R337, it's that full section, and then it would stop before R338, which starts electrical vehicles. That's not included. And all this is for is materials and construction methods for exterior wildfire exposure. So what currently, because we don't have a fire map, what we would propose is that all residential, do you want to do alterations? Do you want to do, or just new buildings? As this states just new buildings. Would you want to do alterations, any alterations, to be followed by this code? Those are all questions that you would have to answer.
Oh, I think all alterations, again, I don't think that, look, we've only built about 8 or 10 homes in the last decade just about. And so
Right,
if
but-
we're ever going to get this as a fire-wise community, I mean, here's what I take a look at. I take a look at this thing, and it truly drives me nuts. If somebody is going to go ahead and put in a new water faucet, they're going to put in a double sink instead of a single sink, and they want to go ahead and they want to even the water feed out of the back, they need to get a building permit. And I'm thinking if we can get that tight and that drilled down, and again, I haven't ever heard of anybody getting hit with a blowing off water faucet, although Golden State was able to blow off a lot of water faucets for people when they did their water hammers right up by Doug there. I really think it needs to be everybody, and I think what we need to do is we need to do this across the board. And I think, again, I really don't care what the rules are so much as the way it's applied. And I think applying evenly is fine. And if we're only going to make upgrades and updates to new homes, we're gonna leave an awful lot of stuff out there that really needs to be upgraded.
I have no problems with that. I'm just pointing out the fact that the way that this section was written was for new construction and was kind of encouraging that alterations be included. And so if we include alterations, again, that would only apply, it would only apply to whatever is being changed, except for a roof. You know, a roof, if they re-roof, then it would, you know, we would, as I think we all want, is Class A roofing. So that would automatically go in. But because they're touching it, then it would then apply. You wouldn't have to, if you have an existing house, you wouldn't have to make changes to that. The building code doesn't allow you to force changes to an existing structure that's already been approved through a previous code.
How about roof vents? How about roof vents down to the, as you take a look at this code, what it says on the roof vents on page 5 of 8, section R 337.6, and we are looking at 337. And when we drop all the way down to 337.6.2, the second to the bottom paragraph, vents complying with all the following. The dimensions of the opening therein shall be a minimum of 1/16 inch, 1.6 millimeters, and shall not exceed 1.8 inch, 3.2. Well, 99% of the vents here are at least 1/4 inch in Ojai. We've got this sprawl, we've got this health and safety, we got this fire hazard, we've got this new ember cast, because now we got some new words for that. And that's part of the roof structure. I know that where we have the side wall screens, there may be an exemption, but it appears if it's going to be on the roof, I had somebody out looking at my roof, and I have those little eyebrows on it, and I just kind of think that's part of the roof. Tell me why that wouldn't be enforceable, or what we need to do to make it enforceable, or if it's not reasonable to enforce it, then I need to just drop the subject. But it appears houses burning down from the roof, if we're gonna spend all that money on a roof, and it's another, I hate to give another few $100s, because we do that 500 times when somebody's building. It's just a few more $100, but 500 different areas. And so I said, give me your expertise on that, because I got somebody putting on a new roof after they got a 350-year-old tree that hit it.
Right. And so, because the easiest way to explain it would be if they touch it, they have to bring it up to current code. If they don't touch it, then they wouldn't have to.
What components, though, are you talking about? A roof, or is a discrete and identifiable component? Because I'm kind of reticent to say, okay, if somebody's doing an addition, you do that according to current code. You've got a really fire-resistant addition, and the rest of the house is whatever it was.
Correct.
Okay, so what's the point of partially fireproofing something? Whereas I can see that for the roof because that's the largest exposure to embers.
Now, we can look into doing something along the lines, if you change one vent, you would have to comply with all roof venting, if that's something you would want. Again, that's, I'm not exactly sure you could force upon,
Yeah.
if they're not touching it, then replacing it.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate thing, but like I say, from my perspective, I can see doing that for,
How are you going to roof? How are you going to re-roof without it touching the eyebrow? You're not.
no, anything components of the roof system, and eyebrow vents are part of the roof system. You know, whether the inclination is to reuse them or not, which is often the case, the building code within the city could be changed that all parts of the roof system have to comply with whatever the code is. But now, we're not talking the fascia, okay? We're not talking about the
Right.
under-eave vents.
We're not talking about the soffit either.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll take what we
Because
can
once
get.
again, if there's, an addition gets put on, and then pursuant to that addition, the whole roof gets replaced, then you got a justification for that. But just making the addition fire hardened is an exercise in spending someone's money when the rest of their structure hasn't been touched and is, well, let's say, more susceptible to fire.
Okay, so let's talk about some other issues. When we have that new addition, it's gonna have GFI, it's gonna have a number of other things, it's gonna have the insulation, it's just gonna be there. Boom, done. It's not gonna have Appendix L, so we're not gonna have fire sprinklers in there. When the rest of the home is a two-wire system, non-ground, we got tons and tons of them. We even have some knob and tube. And we have non-GFI in the water areas within the house. We're gonna leave all that?
Yes. There's nothing, in the code, you're not allowed, you just can't force somebody. 'Cause
And that's
technic-
okay, and that's
Because
okay.
in the code, some of those systems that you have said are still allowed.
Still viable, yeah, you
Still-
can
still
build it
viable.
new.
Now, yeah, you and I have had a conversation about this before. If there's a imminent threat, a bare wire that's causing a problem, then we could force that's a life and safety issue that causes a hazard, then they may have to do some repair upgrades, not necessarily to the entire house. They would only have to repair what is damaged.
Yeah, and Tom, under the current code too, on re-roofing, if it's over 10% of the existing, you need to re-roof the whole roof, is that right?
Not in this city. It's 50%, Tom.
It's what we requested, but nothing has happened.
I mean, we can most certainly say if you're re-roofing more than 10%, then it has to be a full re-roof.
Okay.
And I would expect that we
Yeah, we'll
would,
bring
we
that
would
up
do
yet.
that. And I would expect that it would be Class A.
Yes.
Every roofer I've spoken to, and I've been speaking to a few of them, they say no one puts less than a Class A. It's just standard. That's the opinion I get from every roofer I've spoken to. Now, it may not be the case.
No,
They're allowed to
They're allowed to.
put less than a Class A if less than 50, if less than,
I feel like I'm dumb for asking it.
if less than 50% of the roof is damaged, or you don't exceed 50% in a single year. And so when I go over to Golden West, you can see some of these rolled roofs on top of rolled roofs on top of other stuff. And we have, other than historic and landmark and Mills Act, those are exempt from the shake roof issue. We still,
Well, but it's putting on another roof, I'm saying, because a lot of times the
oh,
real estate.
putting on another, I'm just talking about repairing from the wind damage that we had.
Oh, I see.
See, they can repair that forever.
There's no question that it's a Class A. That's the way they
Okay.
talk to me.
Any other
they, so,
items, folks?
is there any parts of this then of 337 that we want to make a recommendation on regarding being more stringent besides the roofing issue, or at least the application of the of that section?
337-3-5-2-1, page 4 of 8, left-hand side, where the line is. And this is just kind of general for, we have a number of homes where we have shingles as an exterior covering. And I want to know what we do about that. What is your best advice? I see where somebody has only 20 squares on the roof, and they got 60 squares around the house. It's kind of like, wait a minute, the exterior walls are 3 times more hazard than the roof.
Well, that's in section 337.7, right?
337.
.7, that's the exterior covering.
Right. How do we, well, this is under the weather and all that, because what happens is, these things are fine, they get fire retardant, then after a few rains, after a lot of sun, after a lot of heat, that fire retardant doesn't stick there forever. It goes away, they get brittle.
Well,
And-
but that's
and-
the same thing, whereas if somebody does an addition or they do a repair, you can require them to come up to this standard. And if we make a recommendation and the council adopts a recommendation, and all it is that part of that structure is gonna be fire resistant and the rest of it isn't. So, I mean, doesn't seem to make good sense. I can see doing it with a roof once you've established the parameters that trigger a replacement. You know, and people also do have to understand, a lot of times they think Class A is tile and cement.
No, it will withstand fire. The weight
Yeah, it's
of
a rating.
two clay bricks, the weight of 2 clay fire bricks for 2 hours. That's what that is. A Class
They
C
have
roof.
asphalt. They do have asphalt comp shingles.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's just as everybody agrees, it is just the fire. Not just the fire. It is the fire rating of the
And
shingles.
the consideration is usually when you go to Class A, if it's an older structure, the roof rafters and the roof framing may not withstand the weight, because even with composition, fiberglass reinforced composition shingles, the weight is significantly more than a Class B shingle. So that,
Not the asphalt one.
Not typically not for the asphalt. If you're replacing like for like materials, like an asphalt shingle for an asphalt shingle, you're not going to require any structural engineering. But if you go to that composite tile looking roof, like wood, then you're probably going to need a structural engineer to come out and do an analysis of your roof. But that's not the only option. There's plenty of options out there for you to do. And just to, there is one thing that I just need to let you know, that we do have to run this by planning, just to make sure that any items that you cross off isn't going to violate any of their ordinances or something that they can work around. I just want to let you guys know. So if
excuse me.
so like
Planning,
what
we're talking title 9
we're correct.
Okay.
But we just have to let planning know that because of the changes, then they wouldn't be able to allow certain products. But that's after the resolution's approved. They don't have any
think
insight.
planning had anything to do with specification of product.
Well, planning has the aesthetics. The way the building looks, it goes through planning. So we have to let them know what materials.
I have questions about that right there, okay, because planning is planning and zoning. Aesthetics.
Correct.
Okay, I'm not so sure about, but the bottom line is, how something looks is still not specifying materials.
Okay.
Well, anyhow, we have doors and windows and exterior and all that stuff. It's time for us to get rid of all type of plastic, acrylic, and other type of skylights, which are hazardous for ember showers. It is hazardous for firefighters, and it's hazardous for the city. And so it's time that those things be taken out. Now, how you do that, again, we're going to have to figure out whether, you do a remodel or you only do it when there's a re-roof, or when you can do that. We certainly don't want any more. They've proven to be dangerous.
Where is that in this section? 337?
Well, it's close. What I'm doing is I'm
I don't
looking.
see any reference to skylights.
I'm
in
looking
this.
at section 337.8, exterior windows and doors. And I am going to, by analogy, figure that is an exterior window or exterior glazing.
We could certainly,
It's part
could
of, it's
certainly-
part of a roof system, and if you're going to address roofs, and that's, so far, all I'm seeing here is something that would be appropriate to make a recommendation on. It's all about roofs. Because, like I said, you can't, there's no benefit to piecemealing,
Well,
structure.
if you wanna put that on the eyebrows and this is a roof replacement, that's fine. You wanna put it in that category, that's fine. But we just can't leave these things forever and ever. The roof's gonna last
I
for
get
30
that,
years, get
But
'em out.
having an acrylic skylight in a Class C roof, which one's gonna cause the most problem?
Class C roof.
There we have it. So, I mean, the reality of the situation is making it, changing the requirement for a roof replacement from 50% down to 10%. Okay, that would be part of the resolution. Having that include the upgrade of any roof vents. You don't have to describe, eyebrows, just vents that are inherent in the roofing system, or part of the roofing system, and skylights that are part of the roofing system, okay? And you want to say, shall be laminated glass, okay?
Whatever.
That's
but just
usually
not
what,
vinyl.
that's usually the option, isn't it?
well, it's glazed glass, so it'd be some sort of glazing, yeah. So,
Okay, just,
but-
it doesn't have to be from a strength perspective, doesn't have to be laminated, like, I'm thinking, and I realize we can't specify brands or materials, but I'm thinking the difference between say a Velux product and another one that has simply, I would hope it would have tempered glass versus, so there isn't any consideration from that perspective either.
There would be,
Okay,
and,
there's a reasonable place to land.
we can, well, sorry. So in here, it describes the glass in itself, and what I would.
And as far as the exterior,
The exterior windows, and
Okay.
we can just add skylights to that,
Okay.
to be more specific if you would like. We could say exterior windows and skylights, and what that would include would be, so
okay,
if they replace the way to look at it is that it would be building upon with, as you go. So you don't necessarily, most of the time, you're gonna replace the skylight when you do your roof.
Right.
Because they leak. If you don't replace it, you technically don't have to replace it.
okay,
But if you do replace it, then it would be at this level.
okay, but we're saying that if it's a plastic skylight,
Mhm.
an acrylic skylight, and we're gonna require that it be replaced
During a re-roof?
during a re-roof
Okay.
with something, and then that section that is the roofs, where was that? 337.
And I'd also, while you're searching, I'd still like to have it under the glazing where if they're gonna replace a skylight, then they can't replace it with a vinyl or a plastic skylight.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah,
It-
so
it-
we're gonna
it-
go from.
Even if they don't replace the roof, if they just replace the skylight, it's gotta be.
So in section 337.5 roofing, there would have to be some reference then to skylights if you're putting them in 337.8.
337, you said 337.5, you said?
Yeah, that's roofing. So if if we're revising that to, I mean, we're at this point contemplating changing the municipal code to require a replacement of a Class C or a Class B roof if the scope of the work is over 10%
Mhm.
of right? And at that point, that would
Or
also require the vent section, which is 337.6, and the skylight, which should be in 337.8.
Tom, you're out in the field quite a bit and look at this. What do you think of that? What do you think of the skylight? That's, I mean, is replacing from plastic or whatever we've got right now.
I don't know I'm not sure how the plastics or the acrylic react with the fire off the top of my head. You know, I think it would make sense to change the skylight as you're changing a re-roof.
I mean, what's sold at some of these major stores, are they up to par? I mean, are they fire rated on those, or?
They're available. The manufacturers have them. How readily available, I'm not aware of.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, moving on, and I don't see an applicable spot for insertion. Had a great fire here 2 months ago, and it's in the garage, and it burned and burned and burned and burned until a citizen came by and pounded on the front door, and the people inside the home didn't even know that it had been burning for 20, 30 minutes. It had already burned through the roof, caught in the ceiling structure, and I am just flabbergasted that we don't require some type of, not a smoke alarm, but a fire alarm in garages. I mean, it just makes sense. Fires start there.
You
We
mean
got a
heat-
nice
you mean
fire
a
alarm.
heat detector?
I am gonna defer. We have so many heat detectors, 30 degrees in 30 seconds, and it goes off, because everybody will argue with you about a smoke alarm will go off with the carbon monoxide, and you shouldn't have that car on the road. If it has that much carbon monoxide, you shouldn't be driving it. It's
Yeah,
bad
but
for
it's-
everybody's health.
If you're trying to warn of the presence of fire, a heat detector does that.
Great, whatever. We need to have some type of an alarm system in the garage.
Should they be hardwired?
How much expense?
Well, it's gotta be up high to be effective.
Well, it's gonna be where the garage door opener is. And we usually have
Outlet?
we always have an outlet for garage doors. I would say that 99% of the homes that are newer than Ron's home over there, has one of those, and so you already have a way to put it up there, and you've got electricity. Actually, the simple thing is the state of California should require every automatic garage door opener to have a fire alarm in them, and then that way we get the garage protected. Is that overbearing?
My question would be is, at what point would they be required to install it?
I think when you have a permit, I mean, let's think about this for a second. I'm required to get a permit to install a water heater.
Correct.
Okay, if they install a water heater, I'm the only one that gets a permit. You can go through, and we installed hundreds of water heaters, and there's only been one permit issued. When you get a permit, that has to do with a number of areas. Any type of remodel over $500. I mean, we're talking $50 for crying out loud. And again, with this in mind, if your house burns up, it's terrible. But if you burn down your neighbor's house and the rest of the block, it's this is pretty tough. And we have lots of smoking. We got rags in there. We got faulty cars. We got bad wiring. We have lots and lots of reasons there where we have ignition in a garage. Garage or kitchen. That don't usually happen too many other places in the home, but the garage is prime. And I think whether it's attached or detached, that some type of permit triggering should make that. I don't want to be egregious, but I really think that, that is a health and safety item. And in this little community, we can't afford any house to go up.
Okay, do we want, at this point, is there any other comments, or we want to try to formulate a resolution enough that staff can draft something to come back to us?
Yeah, and Tom had a question. At what point? You sell a house, you have to have your sewer lateral cambered. I mean, do you do it upon sale? Do you do it upon permit exceeding $1,000? I mean, you know, there's a number of easy ways you can do that. Just pick one. I don't want to make it egregious, but if you're selling a home and you sell around a couple of hundred homes a year, and you guys are giving out how many hundreds of permits a year, you know, what'll happen is in 5 years, we'll have half the town will be converted over, even though we'll have a lot more sales. Even though the permits and sales will be double the amount of residences we have, the same people do things and the same people don't do things. So transfer of title, or permit in excess of, how much, guys? I mean, do we want them to do it when they're putting in a water heater? What was my water heater, 30, 40, 50 bucks, the permit for that? Not much.
I think it's
It was relatively,
less than $100.
yeah, less than $100. And I think putting one of those things up, and if you didn't require it to be hardwired, they have these kitty, and those things are 20 bucks, and you can just plug them in.
So either hardwired or battery?
Well, how about plug-in?
Yeah, the cost,
How about plug-in? Hardwired requires a permit. Hardwire is gonna require an electrician. If you get a plug-in, I've got one electric garage door on this one side, and I've got 2 plugs. So I can plug that plug-in and attach it, doesn't bother my garage door, and so I think,
Smoke detectors are acceptable now, just
Okay,
batteries, so.
they go from $30 to $120 on Amazon.
right, not much.
Are those hardwired or
Plug-in.
those are plug-ins?
Plug-in.
Okay.
Plug-in. They're down to, actually down to, yeah, $25, so,
It's reasonable.
yeah.
I just need to know, you know, how, at what point are we going to trigger that? And
I'd say a permit, the city's
Any-
gotta be
any
out
permit?
looking at something. Yeah.
okay,
Or transfer of title. If we're gonna make somebody do a camera lateral, transfer of title.
Okay,
So any new buyer, the seller would be required?
Sure. And then last, go ahead.
On, plug-in, is that gonna be a factor?
Nope, not when you're in an enclosed garage and you have an ignition, the heat will go up staggeringly quick.
yeah, you know, ostensibly, you always wanna have it in the highest point, but in a garage condition, anything goes is gonna be, as long as it's above.
So there's no
Header height.
There's no height requirement?
Yeah.
No.
But,
The idea is to initiate some level of protection. It may be imperfect. Okay, so you want.
what I would recommend is install per manufacturer's
Manuf-
recommendations.
Exactly, manufacturer's recommendations.
Oh,
So,
okay.
plug-in, manufacturer's recommendations in the garage. That's, we're talking a permit, a city permit, or sale or transfer.
And then the last thing, I have no idea where to put it. I don't think it's got anything to do with this. This is just logical.
And we're gonna have to come back and do the one with the roofs still.
Right. We have too many people that have got their rain gutters hooked up to their sewer systems. We're taking precious rainwater we don't have. We're diverting it right into the sewer system. And I don't know where we look, how we look. Do we do that upon transfer, upon a permit? Do we check everyone and maybe don't force them? But we have a checklist with the inspector that the inspector could take a look at each one and then inform them that that's not legal to do that,
Well, I think,
rather than write an ordinance.
I think the sanitary district's responsibility for that. Their system, that the water the intrusion from rainwater from that
well,
source is being carried into their system.
Well, they'll never get around to it, we will. That's the issue. They're not gonna be issuing any more permits on people that are already got their connection. And so, while that's done, then it's only on transfer of sale that they took a shot, and I recommend the sanitary board do that too. But I would recommend somehow, even without writing an ordinance, that just becomes something that every inspector on that property looks at the rain gutter, because
So
water is past critical now.
Okay, so you're not making something recommended?
Well, I don't think we can. Can we? Is there, I don't think there's any way to glue that one in. Title IX.
I don't know how to fit that into this section.
Okay.
No, because the only, there really isn't, there's only references to
Fire resistance.
rainwater from rain gutter system shall be is when you're on high, expansive soil of over 50 expansion index, and that shall be directed away from the soil to non-erosible surfaces and out to the city street. So, that's not bad. That certainly is better than, the undesirable condition of putting it into the sewer system, but there really isn't anything that I've seen in the
Well,
building code.
Well, then let's talk about it in the building code, okay? Whenever you have plumbing, you have to have a mandatory trap, an event. And when they arbitrarily hook up to the clean out, it doesn't meet either criteria. There is no trap and there is no vent.
So it's a
so,
violation of the
That's a
plumbing code.
violation of the plumbing code, and it wasn't permitted.
Okay, well,
So
so
it-
if it's a violation, then you guys can look to make sure everything's up to the plumbing code
Well,
every time we have a permit
that's-
issued, correct?
well, the rain gutters wouldn't be part of the plumbing code. Technically, it would technically fall under the
Once
sanitation.
they're connected, yeah.
Once it's
they're
connected, it technically falls to the sanitation
All
district.
right, well,
So,
hey,
but
gotta give it a
but
shot.
the other way to look at it is that we do have systems that use infiltration pits and other items. So it's not very easy to determine whether it's connected to the sewer or some other form of infiltration on the property. We do have a lot of underground storage tanks or infiltration pits that are throughout the city also for the purpose of reclaiming that water back into the water table. So it would be very hard to.
That's okay, I'm just talking about a courtesy
Right,
note.
let's, that I'm sure will come back. So at this point, do we have a resolution that we can vote on relative to the roofs?
Can't we just direct staff to,
Develop a resolution?
to develop the changes,
Proposed amendments? Okay, can you do that?
Most certainly. Would
And I
you
think
like
at
that
this
for the
point, you
next-
have the parameters, right?
I have the parameters. I'll try to best fit it into the
Right.
code as best as I can. And then at the next meeting, we can discuss if we need to move
This-
anything, and then we can do a draft resolution after that.
Okay.
Okay.
Fabulous. Do we have anything else then? Excuse me? Did you have anything you'd like to report or make comments on from the vis-à-vis the planning commission? Mr. Quillisi?
Thank you, sir. I'm starting to wear a rut in the carpet here.
Mark Ruster.
Yes, Planning Commission Chair John Merck had a business conflict at this hour, so I am standing in for him as the Planning Commission liaison this evening. I just want to let you know, over the last 3 months, the Planning Commission has covered solar access guidelines. This is whether or not you and your house or building are shading your neighbors to the north such that they cannot use solar panels. It's rules around that topic. We've also worked on water-wise guidelines, and at our last meeting discussed priorities from the Commission's point of view for the Community Development Director to develop things for us to discuss as discussion items to recommend policy to City Council. Finally, at the end of our last meeting, we received a notification from the City Council representative that there was a long list of to-dos from the City Council to the Planning Commission which had not been accomplished, something with which this board is familiar, I'm sure. I have to go back and look at the tape again because I couldn't write down all of those things, but it had to do with things like lot coverage and other things like that that are land use and zoning kinds of things, and there was this specific notation in that recitation that the Planning Commission had had 3 of our semi-monthly meetings in a row canceled for lack of any hard cases to decide. And I have to agree that there are a lot of policy issues on which we, like you, should be developing proposed policy and forwarding it to the City Council. So that's pretty much what happened with the last few Planning Commission meetings. Also, I was asked by Council Member Francina to let you know that she had no particular comments to make at this time, at least none that she gave me, but to assure you that while she had to absent herself from the building for other reasons, that she would be watching as much of the balance of this meeting after she left the building as possible on television. So she's not ignoring you. She had something else she had to do, short duration, urgent. And that's my report, sir.
All right. Very good. That takes care of everything, and I think at this point we will adjourn the meeting at 8:47.
Yeah, we didn't talk about chimney spark arresters. I had it on my list. Spark arresters,
We'll come back to
yeah.
Congratulations. You threw a whole lot at staff, a whole lot of specific